for your community members to grow it to feed other community members. So it involves, it's a lot of different groups standing up and saying, I want to be able to eat the kinds of beans that I grew up with. I want to be able to eat the bitter melon that my grandma ate, and I want to be able to grow it here. I want to be able to access the seeds. I want to know how to do it, and I want to grow it and share it with other community members.
Now, just, sort of intuitively, I guess, that people have lost the ability to do those things, to have the food that has been handed down to them by culture and by tradition. What's the cause of that situation? And is it just here in this country, or is this a global movement we're talking about?
Well, it's global. It is more of an issue in countries where the food system is industrialized. Sorry, we're out on a street in Chinatown in San Francisco. So if you hear cars honking and people, that's what's going on. The industrialized food system doesn't really support niche markets, and so we've lost varieties because of the industrialized food system. We have really narrowed down, what we can get in grocery stores and what we think of as the American diet. And so as people come to the U.S. or as they've been here a long time, they lost that, uniqueness that was part of their food, their, culinary history. And so here in the U.S. and around the world, it's, that the state of that is it's different developmentally as far as how far along we are on that system, but it is increasingly becoming an issue all over, even in undeveloped countries.
Yeah. Just like there's huge corporate influence in politics, for example. What is the corporate influence in the food industry? What is the nature of it, and how is it, impeding or assisting you in your quest for food sovereignty?
Well, corporate agriculture, what it does is it figures out the cheapest and most efficient ways to produce food, and so that generally involves concentrating production, narrowing production, so just raising, a few breeds of livestock, raising a few varieties of tomatoes, and setting up, basically industrial methods so that when you are producing out in the field, you're using big equipment, you're using migrant labor that comes in and comes in when you need them and leaves when you don't need them. And, it's a good way to produce large volumes of food really cheaply.
Okay.
As long as you don't think too hard about the cost of it.
Right. But, on its face, it might be represented as being cheaper, but is it really? Is it more efficient and cheaper, really?
Well, it is, it is on the surface. People pay for it with their health. They pay for it because, part of the efficiency means that, as migrant laborers, I've talked to people who were, out harvesting in the field when, pesticides were being sprayed nearby, so people, get exposed to chemicals. So they pay for it with their own health. They pay for it with, lousy wages. And just it's hard work, the abuse it does to your body. Communities pay for it because they lose, that kind of agriculture relies on chemical inputs, so you lose the vitality of the soil, you lose diversity of, birds and wildlife in and around the field. The communities that surround the factories that produce the chemicals also pay a price.
So, locally, can you tell us about how the movement is progressing here in Kansas City?
Well, Kansas City is, we are seeing just a lot of growth and interest in growing. So there are more home gardeners than I've ever seen before. There are more community gardens starting up, school gardens. We're seeing a lot of people getting interested in entrepreneurial agriculture as a way to generate income for themselves and their families. I think that, one of the things that is fun about coming to a conference like this is you get to, we get to see what we're doing really well in Kansas City and some of the areas where we maybe could be more ambitious. I think that one strength we have as a community is that we do have a lot of entrepreneurial agriculture relative to other other communities. I think that our sort of Midwestern fondness for capitalism actually has a positive expression when it comes to that kind of, small-scale entrepreneurial farming.
Can you give us some more details about this small-scale entrepreneurial gardening? Are there things that individuals can do at their own home for?
Well, Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas both are pretty friendly to urban agriculture and urban food production, and we could definitely see improvements on both sides of the state line, but you can in the city grow and sell food. There are restrictions around selling on site. In some cases, Kansas City, Missouri has some pretty progressive codes last year, the year before, that gives people a little bit greater reign in how they can sell produce that they've grown themselves on site.
Go ahead.
So there are people who are growing and selling out of community gardens. They're going to farmers markets. There are people who are growing and selling in their backyards or front yards. There are people. As you're probably aware, we have a lot of empty lots in Kansas City where there used to be houses, and there are people who are reclaiming those lots and using them to produce food for sale.
Okay. Can you give us some more info on this front yard gardening? What are things that people can do just as individuals, not, even somebody who's trying to be an entrepreneur?
If you've got halfway decent soil and you don't have too many trees, you can grow vegetables in your front yard. You can grow tomatoes, fruit, peppers, pears, fruit trees. You can grow, you can plant corn. You can, they're really, unless you're in a homes association where they have restrictions on that, and a lot of them do, there are actually in the city no restrictions on what you can grow in your front yard in Kansas City, Missouri, or KCK.
Well, I know personally that there are a lot of things that one can grow in the front yard, the backyard, the side of the house, just in containers. Lettuce and Swiss chard, and I've had personal success with arugula.
When you're growing in the front yard, you are, people are going to have opinions about it a little bit more than in your backyard, and so you probably want to pay a little more attention to how it looks, wanting it to look nice for your neighbors. So if you're growing in your front yard, you probably want to